For centuries, humans have been growing alongside our botanical brethren. Our histories have mixed and mingled to bring us modern medical marvels, faded folklore, and everything in between. Of course, in order to understand the plant, we have to start with its roots. I'm M. Grubner-Gaddis, and this is Rooted. Hello, and welcome back to an episode of Lightly Rooted, a show just like normal Rooted, except for I do all of my research with you. And instead of 8 hours, we usually spend about 40 minutes together. So with that in mind, today, I'm asking you another vitally important question that I'm sure the scientific community has kind of answered, but I don't personally know. And that is, did Little Shop of Horrors have a point? Should we be feeding our plants blood? Now, obviously, if you are a woman, especially if you're a woman who uses a menstrual cup, you've probably seen just about every single blog for basically from, I don't know when they were created until now, telling you that you no longer need to buy blood meal because you can just dump the contents of your menstrual cup right on into your plants and they'll absorb it. And it's great, supernatural, fulfilling the cycle of life. And with that in mind, I'm not saying it's not possible. It's just that I know blood meal goes through, it is blood, to be clear. Blood meal is still blood. It's just that it's kind of gone through some kind of processing that makes it a little easier for plants to digest and also a little less smelly. My main concern, to be clear, with using menstrual blood in plants, especially houseplants, would be that there's not as much soil for it to absorb into, and you're not necessarily watering them as much or in the same way. So I just wonder, would it attract flies? Is it stinky? Or is it genuinely so much better for the plants that it's an asshole move of me to even be asking? So with that in mind, if you're still here, welcome to my descent into madness. And let's find out, shall we? Alright, we're gonna start with earthsciencegrowing.com expert advice blood meal. Just because I think blood meal, it's important to understand, we do fertilize plants with blood. And we have for hundreds and thousands, well maybe not hundreds and thousands, but for a very long time. For as long as humans have been farming, we have figured that things decompose other living things, and therefore that is beneficial, and we have given plants blood. But maybe not in the Audrey 2 way where we cut our hands open and let them drink it like Dracula, and more in we tried this out, here you go. Hopefully someone will think that's tasty and poop it out onto you. But do they absorb it directly? Let's learn. So, blood meal can be used as a nutritious, environmentally friendly fertilizer. Okay, so important note. The blood used in blood meal is typically a byproduct of livestock production. So it's coming from animals we're turning into meat. And it's material that we wouldn't use otherwise. So this blood is collected, dried into a powder that is super rich in organic nitrogen, and then kind of ground up into fertilizer. And again, okay, so we haven't really talked a lot about fertilizers on the show. But fertilizers are made up of 3 key ingredients that keep your plants alive, and they all do different things. So blood meal is fulfilling the N in the NPK value, and N is for nitrogen, and nitrogen is what helps our plants to put on healthy roots and support new green growth. So that's what we're using it for. It's definitely really helpful in the early stages of your plant's life cycle, especially, I think the easiest way to think about this is by thinking about fruit production, specifically tomatoes. You don't necessarily want them to put all of their energy into green growth, but especially early on, you want your plant putting on as many strong, hardy limbs as it can, because without those limbs, you can't get flowers, and without those flowers, you aren't going to have tomatoes. So that is why nitrogen is super important and helpful, and it needs to go into the soil. And one thing about our environment, our air has plenty of nitrogen in it. It's all around us, but plants cannot absorb nitrogen through their leaves. It has to be put into the soil for them to be able to absorb it. So it's not like they can just have it whenever. It can be kind of challenging as far as resources go to get it. So you can hear sometimes of plants that are nitrogen fixers. That would be like anything in the legume or Fabaceae family. And they actually work to provide nitrogen by essentially teaming up with teeny tiny little bacteria. And the bacteria kind of like put out a little sign, essentially through like a chemical. It's like an ad in Craigslist, but through chemicals. And they're basically like, hey, we would really like to bring nitrogen into the soil, but we can't live in an area where there's oxygen. That shit's just like toxic to us and we cannot tolerate it. Is anyone willing to like give us a little spot, like give us a little office space so we can do this as our small business? And where a lot of plants are like, hey dude, that sounds awesome, but unfortunately, like, I don't really know how to build a space without oxygen. Kind of need that shit too. Plants in the Fabaceae family are like, no problem, my guy. I'm gonna build you a teeny tiny little studio that are these weird little ball-looking things on my roots, and you guys can hang out there and just do your thing. Like, I'm not gonna charge you rent. This is not even like a Rent the Musical situation where I'm gonna try to charge you back rent. You guys just hang out, and like, if you give me and my friends as much nitrogen as we need, like, you're good to go. And so that's what they do. It's kind of like Breaking Bad, except for not really. But kind of. So that's the situation with nitrogen. That's how plants are getting nitrogen naturally. When there aren't Fabaceae family plants, there's plenty of other little bacteria guys in the ground that are just doing this. But that is like an interesting little mutual beneficial situation. Blood meal is another way that nitrogen gets into the soil. Just to bring us back on track. Sorry. Okay. And this is just kind of letting us know blood meal is one of the best organic sources of organic nitrogen that we have, which means that plants can actually digest that. They don't need to make a Breaking Bad deal with another local group. They can just absorb that. So it's not so much that they are needing it for nutrients. It is primarily to give them nitrogen, which plants need a lot of, but cannot produce themselves. Okay, but it also apparently can be helpful in repelling unwanted animals. I don't know how true this is because I feel like I have seen deer literally just like decimate anything if they're hungry enough. But I guess the caveat to that is if they're hungry enough. The idea here is that if they smell blood of another prey animal, they're not really keen on going over there because they're like, I think there might be coyotes or something. I'm gonna stay over here. And then also, it might be able to help activate compost, and that would just be like the little bacteria guys that are in there are like, ooh, what a tasty little treat someone dropped in here. Kind of like if you're not hungry, but then you see that someone has your favorite snack, so you're like, well, I'll just have like a couple bites of my favorite snack. And then the next thing you know, you're actually ravenous. That's what blood meal's doing in compost. But is period blood the same as blood meal? Is it not? I think to understand this, we're going to have to let's just see if the experts explain it, but just be emotionally prepared that we might be Googling what is the difference between normal blood and menstrual blood. And if you don't like that, I'm impressed that you made it this far, but here's where you should leave us. Okay? All the love in the world, sending you a little forehead kiss if you want one, but this is where you should stop the episode. It's giving you one last chance. Okay. If you're staying, we're going to period blood as plant fertilizer. This was pushed out by ABC Science, Dr. Chloe Warren, on Friday, the 20th of July, 2018 at 1:24 p.m. for those of you who really wanted the exact timestamps. Okay, we're getting into the good stuff. Sorry, I had to read it. So they want us to start off. They asked a microbiologist who is also a soil scientist. His name is Dr. Oliver Knox. Shout out to Dr. Oliver Knox. You're a real one for answering my questions. So typically in an average period, women are going to lose 2 tablespoons of fluid, which I'm sorry. It feels like I lose way more than that. I feel like I am Sally in Being Human, and I'm filling up. It's not Sally. She's the ghost. Hold on. People are screaming. What's that lady's name? This is important. We have to go on the tangent. Okay, I feel like I'm Nora, and I'm like filling up an entire kiddie pool of blood every period, but apparently I'm losing on average 2 tablespoons. I feel lied to, but I'm inclined to believe Dr. Oliver Knox or whoever did this research. And Dr. Knox says that you would need to like definitely water that shit down, because if you don't, it just kind of sits at the top of the soil and it can't be absorbed as well. But it contains a lot of stuff that is not blood, right? Like it contains mucus, it contains tissue. So while it is a decent source of nitrogen because it does contain blood, and if you're watering it down and watering it in, it wouldn't necessarily attract flies, your menstrual blood would more or less be food for insects more so than it would be a reliable source of nitrogen. So it's not necessarily a bad thing to add in there. But this article does go on to like essentially just say, the blood we lose and what makes up that blood can change a lot, not just from woman to woman and period to period, but also throughout the cycle. So it's not super consistent in terms of what kind of nutrients you would be giving to your plants. There's not necessarily a good way to know how much is blood versus mucus or something else. So it's not the best. Plus, okay, and this is something we should all be doing. If we are working directly with composted manure, that is poop. Whether it is human poop, whether it is horse poop, cow poop, I don't care what it is, it's poop. You shouldn't be touching it directly with your bare hands, you little nasties. And if you are, now's the time to stop, because you can get really sick from doing stuff like that. You can get ringworm. You can get all kinds of nasties, okay? So don't do that anymore. Look me in the eyes and tell me you're never going to do that again. Thank you. But if we're mixing blood, period blood, that has not gone through any kind of hot cooker to get rid of bacteria, we are introducing that bacteria as well as any additional blood-borne pathogens that may exist into our soil. And so, while it may be helpful, potentially, it also does pose a risk, especially if you're like inviting your best friend over to repot your cactus and then maybe they accidentally slice their finger open on the cactus and then put it into the bloody potting soil. Now you've got a potential mess on your hands, bestie. So maybe don't do that, because you can still pass blood-borne infectious pathogens through the soil. So, in essence, we really can't know everything that's in that blood or what could grow in it. So even if it's not just like a nasty, like, hepatitis, it might just be like an icky mold or something that shows up, and that might not be great. So unless it was stored properly and then tested, it's maybe not the best. So you can do it, but you might not want to. And there's a lot of reasons to not. Essentially, like, it's something you can do, but is it something you should do? Probably not. Probably not. It might not be so good for your plant, and you might just be mostly putting, like, snot in there. Like, basically just hawking a loogie into your houseplant. And I just don't know that they're going to think that's respectful and nice. So, based on what I'm researching, it's your blood, and if it makes you happy to give it to your plants as some kind of offering or something, more power to you. I am not here to infringe upon your personal practice or how you connect with your plants. But for me, I'm going to go ahead and I'm just not going to empty my menstrual cup into my plants. Thank you so much. I hope this has been as insightful for you as it has been for me. For everyone who made it this far, thank you. You're the best. And I promise next time we do one of these that I won't talk about blood. Love you. Bye.
Until next time, be kind to yourselves, be kind to the earth, and just like a plant, drink your water. If you liked the show, please subscribe and consider leaving us a review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or anywhere else you listen. You can also find us on Facebook and Instagram at rooted.pod. We're finally updating regularly on YouTube at rooted.podcast, and you can check out our website, rootedpod.com, for transcripts, updates, merch, and so much more. The show is written, produced, and hosted by me. I'm Grebner Gaddis, edited by Kat Friend of Friend Diagram, and our theme music was written and produced by Eric Cluxon. Rooted is a Henbane Media LLC production.